Now let's move on to the highlights then. There's some
Oh, the highlights? I'm just kidding.
There
We
are-
actually love the United
there's
States.
some great things about the United
Yeah, there is,
States.
This is Worldschooling Q&A. I'm Astrid, creator of The Wandering Daughter. As a traveling family, we've spent 4 years traveling full-time to over 18 countries and 6 continents. Wherever we go, we try to learn as much as we can about the countries and cultures we visit. While we didn't coin the term, we like to call this worldschooling, using the world as our classroom. Each week, my husband Clint and I will answer one question about worldschooling and share our experiences of traveling the world with our kids. Ready to get started? Great! Let's dive in.
So we are continuing this week with our country deep dives. And this time we're answering the question, how do I world school in the United States?
Now, I bet maybe some of you are asking, wait,
Why are you covering this topic?
why are you covering the United States? Aren't you from the United States? This is world schooling. We started in the United States. So I think our very first episode, we talked about starting small. We started really small. We started in the United States for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did like during our 4-year around the world trip from 2018 to 2022, we started with like a 3-month road trip around the US. And actually we've done road trips before.
Mhm.
That was like our 3rd road trip across the US because we moved from Seattle to DC.
Yeah.
And then from DC back to Seattle.
Yeah.
Each of those was like a multi-state or multi-week road trip.
Yeah.
So road trips are kind of our thing, if you didn't notice.
We added a kid each time, too.
Yeah.
The first time we went across is just our
One
older
kid.
son.
The second time was 2. And then the third time, which is kind of all around the US, was 3.
And the first time you did that trip, this is your 4th time.
Oh, yeah. This is my 4th
You had
time.
no kids.
Yeah. Yeah. What I love about the US, actually, before we even kind of dive into the logistics and stuff, it is so, I mean, it's basically like a third of a continent, right?
It's basically Europe, right?
Yeah, I mean,
all of Europe,
it's just, there's just so much diversity, not just in like people, but in like the landscapes and the nature and stuff. And we'll talk more about like what kind of things to experience when you're going through it. But I love, like, you don't really see that if you're flying in and out from, city to city. But you do see that if you're driving across the country, or even, if you choose to like do a train trip. I think you've done a train trip, and that was something unique too. So
yeah, that's a great point. I think it really is when you slow down and travel from state to state that you start to see the differences.
Yeah.
I equate it to kind of like when you're in, say, a country like New York City or Tokyo, and you're taking the metro all the time.
A city, you mean?
A city. Sorry, when you're in a city like New York City or Tokyo, and you're taking the underground metro all the time.
Yeah.
You pop out in different neighborhoods, and yeah, you see some differences and stuff, but you don't really get a lay of the land until you kind of go above and go between the neighborhoods, and you see the transitions and stuff.
Yeah.
I think the United States is similar to that. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about, imagine, we're U.S. citizens, so it's we don't need to deal with like the visa stuff. But like if somebody was coming from outside of the U.S., are there specific like immigration rules that they might need to consider?
Yeah, for sure. And we don't know the exact details of this because we haven't had to do it ourselves, but we do have lots of friends who have traveled here, coworkers that have to come here or have family that come here. So we know a little bit about the logistics of doing that. For sure, you need a visa from places like Canada or I think most of Europe, or at least a good section of Europe. You don't need a pre-applied visa, as far as I know. You're granted kind of a visa on arrival type of thing.
Mm-hmm. I think Canada has a special one. Like, the friends I know have like Nexus, which allows them to like cross the border and stuff, and that's the same for U.S. citizens going to Canada, they can apply for like the Nexus thing.
Yeah, basically that, and that just allows us, if none of you are experienced with that, it basically just allows us to kind of pop over the border as much as we need to for various things, and it's
Yeah.
not really that's the Nexus pass is already kind of, it's like a special
Yeah.
passport. Yeah. So I think from that standpoint, there's it is really strict though. So if you are coming from other countries that's not Europe or Canada, there can be a lot more restrictions. I do know, like if you're coming from Mexico, if you want to visit from Mexico to the US, it's actually a pretty tough visa process from what I understand. If you want to come from the Philippines or Indonesia, there's also a visa process you have to follow.
Mm-hmm.
When I say process, it really is a process. I think there's a certain application period, and then you have to wait to hear back. In some cases, there's an interview process. So it can be pretty intense. So just research. If you are listening to this from another country and you want to come visit the U.S., just research what's needed from a visa standpoint. And U.S. restricts visitation from certain countries too.
Yeah.
So it's just something to keep in mind.
Yeah. What about like money and stuff?
So US dollar, obviously, but US dollar is one of the more expensive currencies in the world.
Yeah.
And so almost everything is valued less than that, except for like the euro and the pound and the actually Singapore dollars even. I think the Japanese yen. No, yeah, everything is except for the euro and the UK pound, I think, are valued less than the US dollar. So that can make things really expensive. To put it in perspective, even us that earn US dollars find the United States expensive.
Yeah.
So if you're coming from a country, we know like for Canadian friends, often when the Canadian dollar is like a third less than what the US dollar is, it can be really expensive here. So yeah.
And let's talk about like getting around. I mean, we kind of mentioned taking a road trip. What are some ways to get around the United States, given how big it is?
Yeah, that's a great question. In city, depending what city you're in, but in city in general, there's usually a pretty robust public transportation system that nowadays is really easy to follow. Usually there's some sort of app based or something that you can do. Beyond that, we have all the ride sharing options that are Western based. So Uber, Lyft, taxis often have their own services. There are lots of taxis available. You can rent cars. What else? What else?
Yeah. So like most states have like a major airport in, the state that we live in. There's like a major airport in Seattle, but then we do have another airport in the city of Spokane that kind of services like the region and stuff. I think so. Airplane flights, you can find some pretty inexpensive flights relative. And then trains are kind of an option, but they're becoming a little bit more expensive. It's sort of like then you take the train for the experience and not for getting to a place. And then
when you get on the East Coast, I think the trains in between cities and states is a little bit more affordable and there's more options.
Yeah.
But in the West Coast, it's really not.
Yeah. And then the other option is just to rent a car and drive across the states, I think you'll have to look at the rental agreement to see like if they'll allow return in a different state than where you started. Otherwise, you might have to like go back to the same state, or like some rental agreements won't allow you to go over a certain number of miles or won't allow you to go out of state. So just like be aware that if you're planning on renting a car.
Yeah. You didn't mention bus system. We actually
we do have bus system.
Decent national bus system. There's a few of them. Greyhound has been the one forever. You can take a Greyhound bus pretty much in the US. There's other ones though that were popular, like Bolt Bus. Megabus. Those are other chains that are kind of discount bus systems, but they're nice. They're like charter buses. So there's lots of options.
Yeah. Yeah. And, if you like camping, there are also like RVs you can rent and then and go to like the national parks or like go to campgrounds, and that allows you to move and also have a place to stay. So
Yeah, I'd say the RV culture here is just as vibrant as the RV culture in the UK.
yeah.
It's a little bit different because our RVs here are huge compared to the ones in the UK. They're like moving homes, and they're
Yes.
just
Yeah.
really, really big.
Yeah.
I think the other thing is like when you're in certain regions like Seattle, for example, we have a robust ferry system, and that will take you around to different islands, even take you up to Canada. So there's options like that as well.
Yeah. And we're mainly speaking about the continental or the contiguous United States, which is like the 48 states that are basically within the continent of
It
North
excludes
America. It
Alaska and
doesn't
Hawaii.
include, yeah.
Yeah.
Or any of like the US territories,
Yeah.
basically.
And Puerto Rico, Guam, and
Yeah.
maybe there's another one I'm forgetting.
Yeah. But yeah, so let me think. Anything else? Oh,
American Samoa. That's the other one. Sorry.
there's talk a little bit about healthcare.
So sadly, the U.S. has a major problem with healthcare. It's very expensive. It's unaffordable for most people in the U.S. or for a lot of people in the U.S. And it's a huge deterrent for a lot of people who want to visit the U.S. We've spoken to many of our European friends, Canadian friends as well, that they have to get external insurance just to come to the U.S. Because the thought of getting sick or injured here in the U.S. and going to the hospital without insurance could be a really huge,
Really expensive.
expensive issue. And now, when I say huge, expensive issue, I'm not talking a few $1,000s. That seems expensive, but that's like when we go to Mexico or something. That's like worst case scenario. We might be out a few $1,000s. Although most cases it's under 100. Here in the U.S., a really like a bad accident or something where you're in the hospital for several days or weeks and you have to go through surgery and stuff like that, you could be looking at a bill that's close to $100,000.
Yeah.
And so that deters a lot of people from coming to the US for those reasons. And so you'll have to kind of research what healthcare options are out there for the US. There are some travel options that you can get that are kind of expensive for travel insurance. Travel insurance usually will cost you maybe like for family for what, like $100 a year or something like that. But if you need to add U.S. health insurance to that, you're looking at probably more like $1,000 a year or more, just to cover the possibility of medical issues coming up.
So,
and a lot of times those you'll still have to file a claim against you have to have a credit card to pay and then file a claim against it. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're coming from a country outside of the United States, you'll have to keep that in mind.
Yep.
So now let's move on to the highlights. Then there's some.
Oh, there are highlights? I'm just kidding.
There
We
are-
actually love the United
There's
States.
some great things about the United
there is.
States.
Yeah.
So what are some things for you?
For me, just the diversity in landscapes. I mean, literally everything you possibly could want to see exists in some form in the United States, whether that's desert, tropical, coastal, cold coastal, rainforest, either hot or cold rainforest.
Yeah.
Extremely tall mountains, rolling hills. I mean, like giant cities, like big metropolis cities, beach towns,
Small towns.
small towns. Yeah. Everything you possibly imagine you can find it somewhere in the United States.
Yeah, I do agree. Like the landscape and biodiversity is wonderful. I love the U.S. National Park system.
Yeah.
It's there's just so many parks. In fact, I wrote about some of my favorite like national parks in the West on my website. You can check that out. But there's just so many national parks, and it like allows you, and a lot of them like you get a national parks pass, right? or you can get an annual pass, or you just like pay
Mhm.
as you go. But it like some of them focus on like the natural beauty or landscapes, and then there are also national parks. Like there's one in Seattle that's like dedicated to the gold rush. So
Yeah.
it's technically a national park, but it's basically like a museum.
Yep. Yeah.
Um, a similar one I think was the one in St. Louis with the arch, and
Mhm.
then
Yeah.
Washington D.C. has some fantastic like national park stuff that is a lot of like museum stuff, but it's like
Mhm.
part of like the historical things that you can learn about. So
Yeah.
yeah, I really liked that as well.
Yeah, I think along with national parks as the state parks, most
Yeah.
states will have their own run state park, which is like another subgroup of parks. And both national parks and state parks are really nicely preserved nature settings.
Yeah.
And so the nature preservation in the United States, even though it's been controversial over the years, has actually been really good consistently over. I mean, compared, we've traveled a lot for the through the world, in the United States, in Canada too. I think have
Mhm.
really fantastic nature preservation.
Mhm.
So I think that's really nice. It's it's really fun to go to
Yeah.
these parks and be able to see just nature. Yeah.
Yeah. I would say another highlight for me and something, world schoolers will like is just visiting the different cities around
Mm,
the United States. Like every city kind of has, every major city has like their own distinct personality, in my
mhm,
opinion. So, like, we've been to Boston on the East Coast, and Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C., New York City. They're all kind of like, they all kind of have a similar culture, but they're very distinct as well. And then, you go down to the southern part, and you've got like New Orleans, you have Orlando, you have Houston, Atlanta. Like they all are different in their own ways
yeah.
too. And then
Yeah.
on the West Coast, you have like Los Angeles, San Diego, San Francisco, Portland,
Mhm.
Oregon, and Seattle. And again, like you'll like what I was saying about like the diversity, like if you spend time, like the architecture is different, and then from the East Coast to the West Coast, and also just like the culture is a little
Mhm.
bit different too.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. I mean,
Yeah.
like the Southwest is one of my favorite areas. And
Yes.
the cities in
Great.
the Southwest, like big cities like Phoenix and stuff, but then like
Santa
Santa
Fe.
Fe,
Yeah.
even Albuquerque. I mean, it's different down there too. So,
Yeah.
uh,
Or Denver. I mean, you grew
or
up
Denver, yeah,
in
yeah.
Colorado, and we recently, like a couple years ago, we went to Kansas City, which we were like, oh, what is this? But we were like blown away by how much, like, oh, there's some cool things to do in Kansas City too.
Yeah,
So you can check out a lot of these cities on the website, because I've written about like the things to do in there. So
yeah,
there's just a lot of awesome cities to check out
yeah.
if you're in the United States.
Yeah, for sure. And I want to go back real quick to like the national parks and state parks and nature and stuff. One of the things I really enjoy is the biodiversity
Hmm.
in the US.
Yeah.
I mean, flora and fauna both, like
Yeah. Exactly.
incredible assortment of plants and vegetation, but then the wildlife. I mean, a trip through Yellowstone is, or Rocky Mountain National Park, one of the most incredible experiences. Just the amount of different wildlife you see, and big game wildlife too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something that in our travels across the world, maybe only Africa has as much big game, I think,
Yeah, I think you're
as the
right.
US and Canada. Maybe it's like,
Yeah.
I think the the moose and bears and elk. And I mean, just like really big game types of animals. which can be also terrifying, but it's also incredible to see from a distance. Yeah, I think uh, along with you were talking about the cities.
Yeah.
Um, what's cool, and kind of I thought about this national parks too, is like, we don't have the type of history that say Europe has,
Yeah.
right? We're fairly, from a modern civilization type of standpoint, we're a fairly young country.
Yep.
There are problems with that. We've sadly erased most of our native history, our indigenous history. Although some of that is trying to be reclaimed, and we've dedicated some space for that. But that's still a long
Yeah.
process.
And it's not enough. Like we're just
Yeah.
not doing enough of that, in my opinion.
So most of our history here in the United States is from the last 200 years. It's really the industrialization, and it's the migration from Europe here. And so, that also is problematic because that is the Puritan movement here, which was the start of some of the indigenous destruction, and then also this period of slavery.
Yeah.
But we were also a huge part of industrialization. I mean, that
Yep.
was a huge part of us, the Victorian era, the expansion west, that
Mhm.
kind of stuff. And so, while we don't have a lot of history here in that context, there we document so much of our history. The United States, I think, does a good job of documenting history.
Yep.
And so lots of museums, lots of historical monuments and parks and things like that
Mhm.
to see US history.
Yeah. And I also want to call out like the immigrant communities that like make up
Mhm.
the United States too. I think it's more so than any other country in the world because there was a period of time where the United States was like, hey, we are, we will accept all of your castaways, like the people that don't, like if you're not welcome in your country, come to ours. Um,
Yeah.
so in many major cities, you'll see like communities of like Chinatowns in this
Mhm.
or like little Italies in some of the East Coast towns or like Russian communities or Greek communities, South Asian communities, and what that does is that it creates this like um kind of like a global culture within the United States.
Mhm.
And um, along the topic of food, like there's so many different types of cuisine that you can find from other countries within the United States, and I think it makes it like fun to visit those cities too.
Yeah, and I mean, just Seattle alone here, you have micro pockets of Vietnamese communities and Mexican communities and Indian communities, and so all these pockets, Norwegian communities,
Yeah,
like all
yeah,
these pockets have their own food, which is incredible. And then you have the fusion places as well. So it's
yeah,
uh, food is, I think, you're gonna pay for it. I mean, food is expensive here. Eating out is really
yeah,
expensive, but in all of our travels, it's still United States is still probably the largest diversity in food selection. Now, having said that, I think the one downside I can say to that is that there's a mixed identity or a lack of identity, maybe
mm,
around what American food is. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And so it's kind of up for grabs. I mean, some people claim it's things like hamburgers and pizza, even though those come from other cultures in different ways. We've really rolled it into something that's unique to
spaghetti
us.
and meatballs,
Yeah.
mac and cheese.
But there's also a reclamation that's kind of cool right now of um, things like indigenous food.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
there's a little bit of reclamation of that, and that's being identified as American food.
Yeah,
Soul food, which really is food that comes from the South, like out of slavery, out of Creole slavery, especially.
yeah,
So like I think there's there's some cool things that are coming out of that
yep.
that's really identifying what American food is. Tex-Mex, which is really like a combination of Mexican and Southern American or Southern U.S. food.
Yep.
So yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I want to talk a little bit about like one of my favorite activities that I did with the kids when we spent a month in New York City. And while we were there, we learned about, because New York used to be like uh, one of the cities where like immigrants would get processed through and then, come to New York City and then eventually like go out to other parts of the United States. And so as we were learning about that, we had this fun, like, we decided to like plot on our world map, like what are all of the the countries that have immigrants that have been processed through New York City. And we covered basically so much of the world because with that activity we had like immigrants from European countries, from Asian countries, African countries, even like Latin American countries. They all somehow at some point through like New York's history, and it came in different like phases and stuff, but at some point through New York's history had to get processed through there. And so that to me, like, if there's one thing to take away if you were like a world schooler, is just like that diversity in immigrant communities that you can find throughout the United States.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
You talk about city, and we stayed in New York for a month. I think maybe from a world schooling standpoint, we don't really cover this in the logistics. How can you stay in the U.S. Kind of as a world schooling family and try to do it affordably?
To do it affordably? No, I don't know, actually. I think like Airbnbs are an option. You can typically find some affordable ones if you go outside of the big major metropolitan cities, but they'll still be more expensive than like what locals would pay. Another option, depending on the city, would be house sitting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we did a couple house sitting gigs in the Seattle area when we were visiting Seattle. And I think that's something that you can do to make staying in the United States a little bit more affordable.
Yeah. And if you have a car, that makes that way easier. But yeah, home exchange, if that's an option for you.
Yeah.
Camping, if that's an option, if you come in the summer.
Yeah. So if you've got like camping gear with you, you can camp at the national parks. If you have an RV, there's also like the Bureau of Land Management has like space, like you can camp there as long as you take all your waste with you, basically.
And it's what do they call it? Dry camping? No.
Dry camping,
yeah, dry camping. So that means no resources. There's no water refills. There's no dumping. You need that. So
so there's different ways to make it affordable.
Boondocking it.
Yeah.
That's what they call it. Yeah.
Cool. Do you have anything else you want to add?
Not really. I guess just to offer up, like, we are US based. We love meeting new world scores. If you are from another country and you're world schooling and you do want to come to the United States, feel free to hit us up. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram. You can reply to the show. But if you're going to be in the Seattle area, we're happy to show you around. If we're not going to be around, maybe we can organize like some sort of home exchange or something like that. So it's part of the world schooling community. It's a very giving community. Because this is our home, we definitely offer that up if this is possible.
Yeah.
Well, that's all for today. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Worldschooling Q&A with Astrid and Clint. Be sure to check out the show notes for any links we mentioned in the episode, and visit my website, thewanderingdaughter.com, to dive deeper into world schooling and family travel.
If you like what you hear, please consider supporting The Wandering Daughter on Patreon. It really helps us out and keeps the show going. You'll also get exclusive perks like episode transcripts, additional resources, access to office hours with us, and more. You can find us on Spotify or the podcast app of your choice. If you're listening to this on Spotify, you can tap the bell icon to get notified when new episodes come out. And if you like this episode, please give us a 5-star review. It really helps new people find our show.
If you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe and tap the bell icon to get notified of new episodes. You can follow me on Instagram @WanderDaughter or follow The Wandering Daughter on Facebook. Links to these are also in the show notes. If you have any world schooling questions you'd like us to answer for future episodes, feel free to throw them in the comments or send us a message at thewanderingdaughter.com/podcast. Until next time, happy travels!
Bye!